Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, where the legal industry gets real. I'm your host, Etta Rosa, legal consultant, speaker, and founder of Etta Rosa LLC and the Limitless Paralegal Academy. This isn't your stuffy legal studies school lecture. We're talking mindset, money, modern workflows, and how to build a career and a life you don't need a vacation from. Let's cut the fluff, raise the bar, and change the game one conversation at a time. If you like what you hear, feel free to share and send us your feedback. Now let's talk paralegal. Hey guys, welcome back to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm so glad you're tuning in for our first bonus episode of ending season 6, and we start our new season in September. You know, we always keep it real here, and today's episode is one that honestly every single person needs to hear, whether you're just starting out in your legal career or you've been in the field for years. We're talking wills, estate planning, and more importantly, why so many people, including legal professionals who literally work around this stuff every day, still don't have one. Today's guest is flipping the script on how we think about estate planning, making it less intimidating, more accessible, and way more doable than you've ever expected. So, listen in for more. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your host, Etta Rosa, and today we have David. He has a very interesting product, service, and background, and we're going to learn about all three in less than 30 minutes, right, David? That's what we're doing today.
We're going to try.
I know this is always the hardest part for the guests, but I want you to first introduce yourself to the audience so that we can humanize it, like you were saying prior to the recording. We can humanize the conversation and really get a background story of what we're about to listen to. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll spare you my childhood. I'll start with the
Please
professional side of my background. So I'm Canadian by birth and citizenship. I grew up in Southern Ontario in a suburb outside of Toronto. Went to law school in Canada, and I still practice law in Canada. I became a lawyer about 15 years ago, and I have been at a mid-sized firm. I'm a partner of that firm now. It's where I've been my whole career. So I, needless to say, until Succession Wills, I was fairly linear career path type of guy. I finished law school, got a job at a firm, worked my way up, made partner at that firm. Over those 15 years, I've done all kinds of different areas of law. I'm mostly a business lawyer, doing corporate law, mergers and acquisitions, real estate stuff. And with that came a lot of wills and estates. I was never one to specifically focus on it because I was sort of dealing with bigger ticket, business clients and corporate clients. But when the CEO of whatever company says, "Hey, I need you to do my will," you do it. So what was good about that is even though I wasn't necessarily doing a huge volume of wills and estates work, the work I was consistently doing some, and the work I was doing involved pretty complicated stuff, right? We're talking high net worth people, complicated estates, second marriages, third marriages, et cetera. All of the stuff that makes for a more complicated situation. So in doing that and in other areas of my practice, I was a very early adopter of technology. I mean, in another life, I should have probably become a tech bro, I guess.
You're not the first one to say that,
yeah.
So you're not alone in this.
Well, believe it or not, in circa 2003 or whatever it was, when I graduated high school, back then becoming a lawyer was how you get rich, not going into software. So how times have changed, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But I was really good at it back then, and I loved it. I had a huge passion for the little bit of coding that I did know at the time and this kind of stuff. But I sort of suppressed that side of myself, went to law school, like I said, and followed that very linear career path. But upon starting my practice, it became evident to me very early that lawyers and law firms are pretty antiquated in a lot of ways with how they do business, what their workflows are. And they don't even use the term workflow. That's
No.
the first problem right there, right? So
Yes.
a lot of the modern technology for communication, whether it's Slack or Teams, or for automation, um, et cetera, are just absent. I mean, I know lawyers to this day who still send things by fax, and pay somebody a full time salary to transcribe their audio dictaphone messages, with the little foot pedal and all that good
I
stuff.
love that.
So I was never one of those people. I've never owned a dictaphone in my life. I was doing it all myself, and from a very early part of my career, I was finding ways to automate things and finding ways to use technology. And again, this is 15 years ago. So what was available to us back then, pales in comparison to what,
Mm,
what exists now. Um, and in the process, I had created a few of these different legal precedents for various different types of document sets, most of which would be completely gibberish to a layperson and really only useful within a law practice. The one exception was what I had done with my wills. This was something that, yeah, it was saving myself and my staff time to sort of automate certain elements of it. But unlike the other types of legal documents that I had been automating, and again, this is very crude, like me as a lawyer trying to figure out how to code stuff, and very, very crude, but it worked. Um, and so the wills were the one exception where it was like, hey, non-lawyers could use this too. And sort of it came out of that realization combined with, like I said, the types of wills and estates work I was doing was focused on, and is to this day, focused on, high net worth individuals, people with complex, businesses and corporate structures that they own, et cetera. And
mm,
so the other element that brought this idea to me was realizing that, yeah, those people need the bespoke lawyer experience. Those people need professionals, lawyers, tax people, accountants, whatever, to figure it all out and customize it. But 95% of the population is, I have a house, a car or two, I have some stuff in the stock market, and some retirement savings. I'm going to leave everything to my spouse. And when we're both gone, everything's going to the kids equally. That's
mm.
like 95%
Yeah.
of the time, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
and they're not gonna pay, I don't know, like a $10,000 retainer. I think the smallest I found for a will has been 2,500, and it was because there was barely any assets. It was just a house and a bank account, right? But I guess the more complicated and convoluted, and of course it's all by market, right? We're in Florida, so it tends to be a little lower, but then you like hit the states like New York, California, where first is very litigious to begin with, and second of all, the quality of people are very how do I say this nicely? Aggressive when it comes to their legal matters, right? So yes, they're higher demand, of course, it's going to be a higher price, and the cost of living and everything else has to be accounted for. So I have seen that as well. And as a consultant, you're really preaching to the choir when you're saying antiquated things. And I remember till this day, I was in court. And I was about, I want to say 4 to 5 months pregnant with my first. And my attorney that I was with, we had about 10 trials on docket that we had to take care of. So obviously she brought in backup. And so we were preparing, and I till this day I remember those little rolly boxes, those plastic boxes that fold up, and then you just put a whole bunch of For us, it was a whole bunch of files and every tabs and everything else. And now, fast forward a couple years later, I went to court. Well, I didn't even have with an attorney, and he did an entire trial. Well, he did about 2 to 3 trials that day on an iPad. Like literally connected his iPad, projected it, like the whole 9 yards, and he had all his documents. He just slid. He had a little remote, and it was just like, wow, we went from this roly plastic fold up with like 5 million documents, handing them out, getting the extra so that the jurors can see it and all the 9 yards. And I had to even bring an adapter because the courthouse didn't have the newer outlets. So I had to bring an adapter so that we can connect our projector, if anybody even knows what that is anymore. Yeah, it was like insane to see now that from that to like an iPad, and sometimes not even that. They just come in with a little fob, they put it in, and then that's that. So it's really it's a new world. So we need to speed up with that. And I feel like that's where you're getting at, right? Because another issue that we have in the legal industry that we're all well aware of, especially in the current narrative here in the United States, is there's a lot of gaps in our system. There's a lot of gaps in the legal system wherever it is, whether it's through just everyday person, traffic, a traffic light to a small misdemeanor to anything, right? There's all these little gaps that a lot of people are not aware of unless you either work in that particular practice or like you said, you found that need and you're like this repetitive thing that can actually make money but also help people. And that's like, I just literally had a post on this. I was in Miami Beach the other day, and my husband and I were walking down the street, and we see this little robot. It's just like a little robot. It's like a box, and it has like this little camera on the top. And then we see one, and then we see another, and they're all just crossing the street, waiting for the light to change. And I'm like, what are these robots? And so one of the locals was like, oh, there are delivery people because they couldn't find people to ride the dangerous streets of Miami to deliver food, but people don't want to drive anyway, right? So Miami found this, niche. They invented, several companies invented these little robots that are at temperature. So depending on what you order, it stays at the temperature. So it's either very warm, cold, if it's ice cream, whatever it is, and it's at temperature. It gives you a code. You scan your phone with the code. It opens it up once it's like it's this whole thing, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so cool, right? And so I feel like you're not the only one. Everybody's trying to fulfill a need, right? And if you don't live in these little inner cities like New York City, Times Square, who the hell's gonna drive in Times Square? If you've never been, try driving. It's ridiculous. That's why they have subways, right? And Miami's the same way. It's very congested. There's always construction. Nobody can get anywhere on time. So they found this where people were still wanting to eat out. And, there's a lot of mom and pop places. So it helps everybody, right? It's like a whole like ecosystem. And I feel like this is what you're doing as well. You're fulfilling that need when it comes to the everyday person where they don't need to shell out 10 grand, for an attorney to do a simplified document. Just like a dissolution of marriage, a simplified dissolution of marriage. On average, in the state of Florida, it takes anywhere from $250 to $500 to file, right? Just to file it with the court. But yet, attorneys are charging $5,000, $6,000 a retainer. So on top of all this, they're getting charged. It adds up, and here you are, you're just trying to get a damn divorce. I'm all about the expiration of a life. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a lot of talks of this bill coming out that the marital license is to expire, just like any other license out there. Yeah, so this is interesting. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on that. Not that I'm interested in my marital license to be expired, please. No, my husband and I
Husband
are
better watch out.
yeah, my husband and I are in great terms, thankfully, but I think it's a very interesting thing. And maybe you can opt in or opt out of it, whatever it is, right? Like there's so many different things that are coming up now. These new innovative minds are coming up with these, solutions, right? Which is the whole point of this. This is a solution that you saw, that you filled, and that you created an entire product around. And it's so funny because recently I've been getting hit with all these things, right? Like I was talking to someone else the other day that we're going to soon to have on the podcast with another product that's, filling the gap and everything. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the actual product that you created that you're like, hey, I think this is a really cool idea. Let's do it. Oh, and by the way, we're beta testing another one on the way. So let's tell the audience about that and kind of like obviously you already gave us a backstory of why, because you saw the need and you saw that there was really no competition out there compare it in comparison to what you created. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that it's driven by a gap, right? It's driven by a gap not only between um, sort of, what people need and what how much they're willing to pay for it, but also a gap the in the sense that sort of our society is just being under fulfilled with this issue. Something like 70% of people don't have a will, right? Um, Everybody knows they should have one, but a huge percentage don't have one. And certainly cost is part of that, as you've just said. But I don't think that's the only factor. I think there's lots of factors. It's nobody wants to think about their own death.
Yeah.
Or some of the decisions involved, even if you're comfortable thinking about your own death, some of the decisions of, what happens to my kids or these assets or whatever, difficult, people procrastinate, et cetera. So there's there are two gaps here. There's the simple fact of it's something people need that can be done relatively simply for, again, not for everybody. I'm not trying to put wills and estates lawyers out of business here, but for a large chunk of the population, going and getting that sort of custom lawyer job at a big price tag is just sort of overkill. And then the second thing is that how do we address the gap in what people are actually getting out there? And you alluded to the marriage license expiring thing. Um, I've seen other platforms that do the same kind of thing with prenups, right? So prenups, similar situation. Um, what percentage of married couples have a prenup? Pretty small, and part of that again is stigma or whatever, but part of it is the cost and the inconvenience and sort of the unpleasantness of going to a stranger to talk about these intimate sort of things, right? And it's the same way to some degree with your will. So what we set out to do was try to create a platform that people can do this by themselves, right? They don't have to share these details with anyone, but in a way that is easy to use, intuitive, provides a ton of guidance along the way, and basically try to emulate the experience of getting this done custom by a lawyer, but without the cost and the inconvenience.
Mhm.
And at the same time, and this is something that the ordinary consumer out there maybe won't appreciate, but any lawyers who check it out will, is I really wanted the document itself that this thing creates to be very rich in terms of the degree of customization, the degree of that sort of how intelligent it is. Um, it's not just a static form with a few empty placeholders to stick in, your name and the date and stuff. I mean, this is an intelligent, adaptive document that sort of entire sections and language of different paragraphs dynamically changes based on how you're filling it out, right? um, and so the idea was take something that everybody needs or should have, that they're not currently getting under the current system, find a better way to give it to them, and try to get those numbers up so that it's not 70% of people without a will, and make sure we're doing so in a responsible way that the quality of the output at the end is strong, and do it all in a way that we can hopefully try to emulate the lawyer experience to the degree we can in this sort of an interface in terms of giving the right guidance, making it easy, et cetera. And that's where our AI comes in as well. Um, like everybody, we had to loop AI into this. It's 2026, right?
That's right.
But every day, not every day, but a few days a week, I get a client coming to me in my law practice with something that ChatGPT clearly drafted for some sort of important legal document or agreement. And it's only a matter of time. I haven't seen that for wills yet, but it's only a matter of time, and help us all when that occurs. But what I didn't want was to use AI in the wrong way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want ChatGPT drafting people's wills. If anybody's used AI a lot, you know how much it hallucinates, drifts, lies, etc. Completely untrustworthy. And
It's
at
also
least when it comes to
jurisdictional, right? So a lot of people are not understanding that it's very jurisdictional, right? So especially when it comes to wills, let's say you have assets in other states or in other countries or something like that. So it's very like it's a very intricate thing. Obviously, if it gets too complicated, you definitely want to go to a lawyer, right? We're not talking about those. But I think a lot of people are it's like what I call it's the new Google, right? You remember everybody used to say, I just Googled that. I just Googled that, right? And now it's like, I just chatted that, And it's like, wait, what chatted? So it's like, it's the new Google. Everybody's going, everybody's doing it, everybody. And so I get it. It's like the shiny thing, but you have to use with caution, just like anything else. Like anybody can post anything online and Google will bring it up, just like chat, like as much as you feed chat, it's going to come back to you with the same nonsense or whatever it is, inconsistencies. So it's like, guys, like I always say, I'm like, I don't care who, what, when, and where, but you guys really need to like be responsible for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And well, you have to know what it's good at and what it's not. I mean, AI is an extremely powerful tool, but it's a tool. It's not a, holy grail that's going to solve everything.
Yeah.
And the way in which it can hallucinate, make things up, et cetera, when you're asking it to do very complex tasks or draft things is a prime example of that. And so what we wanted to do was use AI the right way, leverage what it's good at, not what it's not. So what that meant for us was, our existing will builder that we created, line by line of code, me and my partner, he's the software developer, where every line of that thing is exactly what it's supposed to be, and it's all programmatic. It can't make things up. Um, that's dealing with the drafting side of the equation that the lawyer would normally do. But the other side of the equation of what a lawyer normally does when you go to them for your will is they got to get the answers out of you, right? Like
Mm,
if you go to a lawyer to get your will done, they have to ask you the right questions. They have to sort of solicit the right thought process out of you. You might not know who you want to watch your kids or how you want to give an asset divided up. It's the lawyer's job to sort of walk you through that and sort of guide the horse to the water and hopefully get it to drink, right?
yeah.
So that's the part where we thought, that's what the AI can be good at. The AI is good at conversation. It's good at explaining things. It's good at, being an interpreter. So that's how we've used it. It's a toggle. You could toggle it on and off. You could do the will builder in sort of the traditional way as well, if you know what you're doing, or you could toggle into the AI state where basically what this AI is doing is it's not drafting anything. It knows our will builder. It's been trained on our will builder. It knows these are the inputs I got to get out of this user. How do I get these inputs out of them? And so all it's trying to do is explain things to the user and sort of guide the user through that process and essentially fill out the will builder for them. But at the end of the day, the AI has no drafting ability. It doesn't have a pen. Um, so, in our view, this was the perfect responsible way to use AI, right? And it not only that, but it bridges that final piece of the puzzle in terms of trying to emulate the lawyer experience as much as possible.
Yeah, in my research when I was doing AI, I had to do a presentation on AI for Clio. And so I did a lot of research because I wanted to give the most up-to-date information, especially on a platform such as Clio, right? Like you don't want to be misinformed. And so, and as a non-lawyer, I always have to go back to reference this, research that, because I don't want anybody to misconstrue anything I say. So in my research, I came across that AI, artificial intelligence, is getting better at empathy and compassion than an actual human. Because what it does is it kind of reads between the lines now. And so it's like, oh, wait, this person, I feel this language is mostly used when a human is under fear or when they're under distress or they're under, whatever it is. And so what they do is they kind of come back and they're like, I understand you and this and that. And whereas humans, a lay human, just a regular conversation, just kind of like what you would do with AI, is more programmed, I guess, to think of a response versus, you know what I mean? Versus an actual response, right? So we're always thinking about what we're going to say
Yeah.
versus what we're actually going to
How we're going to be
respond. Yeah.
perceived
Yeah,
and yeah.
exactly, right? And we're like, well, if we say this, it's going to be, thrown off like that and this and that. So we have all these little underlining, overthinking moments and AI doesn't, right? So they're actually getting better at the empathy and understanding, which is funny because rewind a couple months before that, they were saying that, AI will never, replace the human and they can never be compassionate and empathetic. And it's learning, right? It's learning how to be that because humans are not learning how to be that, right? I'm teaching that every single day to my clients. And it's unfortunate. Sometimes we forget to humanize the industry and actually, hey, these are humans that are working, and these stories that we listen to, especially when you work in these realms of like criminal law and family law and immigration, these are tough, personal injury. These are tough stories that these professionals are listening to or looking at on video or recreating on pictures that they have to go to trial. And it's like, we kind of have to rein that in, right? And we have to kind of really humanize the experience no matter what we do. And
Yeah.
so,
It's easy to become desensitized over time. I mean, it happens in any
right?
profession, right? Whether you're a
Yes.
doctor, in law enforcement, what have you,
Yeah.
you sort of have to become desensitized to a degree to be able to get through it every day. And when you're
Yes.
dealing with, I mean, different areas of law, it's going to be different things. But um, yeah, we see this stuff day in, day out, and it's easy to forget that the client sitting in front of you, this might be their first time going
Yeah.
through something or dealing with a given situation that we sort of take for granted. And you're right, with AI, there's an opportunity um, to sort of remove that bias or remove that desensitization and bring back some empathy. Especially when, I mean, just a good example is just people being able to take their time, right?
Yeah.
Most wills are done on sort of a flat fee basis. You might size up the client and their situation and give them a flat fee. And then after that, you're not necessarily billing by the hour like you would for other areas of law, which means if I'm doing an intake on a will with a client and instead of the 20 minutes I thought it was going to take, it's taking 2 hours because they're asking a million questions. As hard as I'm going to try to you know be a good lawyer and put the client first and be patient and empathetic, my own biases and my own desires are going to creep in, right? And maybe I'm going to give shorter answers. Maybe I'm going to avoid exploring a particular tangent that they want to go down. The
Mm.
AI's got all the time in the world, and
Yeah.
if you're at your desk at home working through this, you have as much time as you want as well, right? You're not waiting, worrying about the parking meter outside the lawyer's office running out of running out of time.
And these are
So
tough questions. I don't think people understand. Like, I don't know if any of our listeners have actually done one. Like, I remember I did mine after our second born because I literally told my husband as soon as the baby was out, I'm like, this is it, we're done. Like, we're no more. We're having two and we're done. And luckily, I have a lot of lawyer friends. And so I went to one of my lawyer friends that does estate planning. And I said, okay, I have my kids, I have their social security numbers, let's go. And me, that I've worked in the industry, that I've worked with estate planning and everything, it's very different to sit there and ask these questions versus sit there and respond to these questions. Because now you're thinking, all right, who do I really trust in my circle with my children, right? Like, who really is going to be that person or that example that I want them to live since I won't be there to be that person for them, right? And so, like, these are tough questions, right? And it's like, okay, well, but do I want them to have somebody separate for the finances? Because who would I trust with our money and our assets versus who would I trust with the care? Are those going to be two different people? Or can I find someone in my circle where it's one, do I want them to stay in the family or are my friends a better fit? And how is everybody else going to feel about that, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But, I started kind of hesitating on my responses when I'm for a lot of people that have known me, I'm a very like sure person. Like I come in knowing, prepared, I'm very proactive, like I'm a go-getter, like I'm pretty I came in with an idea, right? Like I said, okay, this is the people, this is how the chart, this is how it's going to work. But then the attorney started saying, well, at this point, the parents are at a certain age. So, give or take 10 years, they're going to be at this age. So, that's something to take into consideration. Do you want them to be that elderly and trying to take care of a 10-year-old or whatever? And so, like, these are questions that as a mom, especially, or as a parent in general, you're just like, oh, wow, I didn't really think about it that way. Like, I don't really think about that. Like, of course, I want my kids to be with my parents. Like, why not? And so it's like, it's a very sensitive subject to begin with, right? Because you're thinking about, okay, I'm no longer there. So I can no longer make these decisions and I have to make them now. But relationships can change 5 to 10 years from now. So, okay, the decision I make today is gonna, really be very stern, right? It's gonna until I go back and amend
yeah.
it or change it, right?
And well, that's something else that was important to us in the way that we built this was to try to impart to people that, doing your will is not like a one and done thing that you never come back to.
Oh yeah,
It's
please no.
something that you should be revisiting every few years as people age, as relationships change, as your life circumstances change. And, again, that is a huge reason why we feel doing it the way we are is such a valuable approach because well, right now at least, like we are doing this as a one-time fee for lifetime access. Certainly, anybody who does this now will always have that. We would never take that away, even if we were to change our pricing model for new users in the future. Um, but part of that is to encourage people, like, look, you're not buying a will, a single document right now. You're buying access to a platform and to a living document that should be revisited and refined over time. And, to circle back to the issue we talked about earlier of such a high percentage of the population not even having a will, a lot of times we talked about, price being one reason for that. We talked about just not wanting to face your mortality being another reason. A third reason is sort of perfect being the enemy of good. And what I mean by that is, I see it all the time where I'll have a client and we're doing their will and their estate planning, and they have like 9 out of 10 of the stuff figured out, right? Okay, this is going to be my personal representative. My kids are going to get everything equally, blah blah blah. And then one issue stumps them.
Mm,
Who's going to watch my kids? Who's going to be the guardian of the kids? Like, yeah, I know what the assets are going to do. I know who's going to manage the money, but who's going to be the guardian of the kids? That's a really hard decision. Let me think on it. I'll get back to you. And then
mm,
the person never comes back.
yeah.
And, you know, that right there, that perfect being the enemy of good, now that person doesn't have a will at all because they let this one question stop them. That's the last thing we want. So part of the reason for us having this approach is you don't need to let that one issue stop you, because you know that if you want to come back and amend or tweak your will
You can.
in a couple of years or a couple of days, you can do that. And it's not like you have to pay for it all over again, or in the traditional way, it's not like you have to go call up the lawyer and deal with another big bill at the end, right? You have
Mhm.
that flexibility to go and pull it whenever you want. And so within our system too, after you finish the will builder itself, your will goes into a what we're calling the vault, which is basically an online platform that keeps not only a copy of the will, both a you could put a signed copy up there as sort of a digital safe, but also the draft version that's subject to being changed. But we also have areas on there where you can populate, okay, these are the people I named to be in charge of the money, these are my personal representatives, and you can have their information on there and their email, and you can push a copy of the will to them via email from within the platform, so that it's not just about making the will, it's also about administering it and maintaining it and putting your loved ones, putting the people you are talking about in that will in the best possible position you can to be able to actually carry
Yeah.
out your wishes, because writing the will is sort of half the battle, right? Somebody's got to actually pull up that piece of paper one day and carry it
Yeah,
out.
and carry it out. Yeah, no, obviously. And then of course, like we're not getting into like the trust or anything, right? Where you have to transfer assets and things like that. And that's a whole different ball game. Which I found in my short term of estate planning that you build all this trust, the trust out and you build everything out and then they never transfer the assets. So here we get that call, 10, 12 years down the road. They're now deceased, but they never transferred anything. So it's like, wow, so I mean again it goes back to wait, we can get you to the water but you need to drink the water. But oh my god, David, I can talk to you all day. I really could. This is amazing. I really like what you're doing with the people, for the people, by the people is what I always say. Well, not me, that's by the Constitution, but what the Constitution says. And so I want to kind of end this conversation with, well, what's the name of the actual product that we've been talking about this whole time? Because I don't think we actually have said it. And any tips or tricks that you may have for the audience so that they can kind of take with them outside of the conversation.
So it's called Succession Wills. Sorry, I should have been peppering the conversation with that, but I'm a lawyer, not a salesman, so I'm kind of new to this. But yeah, it's called Succession Wills. The website is successionwills.com. We are at Succession Wills on all the major social media platforms, and yeah, it's easy to use, easy to find, and we're still small. We only just launched a few weeks ago, so
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, so we're still small. So if you have anybody has questions or needs help or anything, and they email us, we're actually able to answer, and it's not AI, it's not a bot doing it. So
Right. Or
because
it won't
at
take
this
like a
point,
hundred days.
yeah, at this point, we just would love feedback, and we just want to try to help people and build something that's really valuable here. So
Awesome. I love it. So with that, guys, until justice is served, until next time, we'll be here. Bye.
thank you.
Hey Legal Pros, are you ready to stop playing small? The Limitless Paralegal Academy is officially open, offering powerhouse courses, real-world tools, and expert-led training to help you build the career and life you actually want. We're not stopping there. The Limitless Paralegal Tour is hitting the road. We're bringing the mindset shifts, career strategies, and community straight to your city with epic speakers, actionable sessions, and zero boring PowerPoints. This isn't your average CLE. This is your legal career reimagined. Join the Academy, meet us on tour, become the legal pro everyone remembers. Visit limitlessparalegals.academy.com to enroll and grab your ticket now. Be bold, be brilliant, but most importantly, be limitless.